pregnant person gets to consent to continue with their pregnancy and must consent to the use of their body, because they are the one that understands their body and their life and their finances and everything that makes up the complexities of human life. They are the only ones who are able to decide and understand what is best for them with the guidance of, proper modern medical practices. And it is true that our world and our country's leading medical minds have, like I said, unequivocally stated that abortion access is essential to comprehensive, evidence-based healthcare. And your opinion can remain your opinion, but it does not get to override the opinion of people who train their entire lives to provide healthcare to people.
Well, so on the matter of consent, obviously the clear rebuttal to that would be that abortion involves not 2 people, but 3 people, one of whom is the unborn baby. Now, I imagine you would have issues with that description, so we can get to that in a moment. The first thing you said, though, is that I'm entitled to my opinion, but I'm only entitled to my opinion as it pertains to my own body, and I'm not entitled to an opinion about what you do with your own body. But do you really believe that? Do you really believe that people can only have opinions about things that pertain to their physical selves? I can't have an opinion about, I don't know, a sunset, or I don't know how automobiles are made, or I don't know, drug use or anything like that. I can't have an opinion about politics, how our government should be run, or how our political community ought to behave. I can only have opinions about myself.
No, I think you misunderstand me. You can have your opinion about anything and anyone that you'd like, but that opinion cannot restrict someone's access to healthcare. You can disagree with someone's choice to get an abortion, but just because you disagree with it doesn't mean that your opinion should override the opinion of their medical experts.
Can my opinion be put into effect to restrict someone's access to drugs like heroin?
Well, in what way?
Well, we have self-government in the United States, at least nominally. And so if I think that heroin is really bad, and I think we ought to have laws against its use, then I can lobby my elected representatives and they can pass a law, as they have, against heroin. And then you are not allowed to use heroin, even though that affects only your own body. I have now expressed my opinion about heroin in such a way that restricts what you can do with your own body. Are you saying that that is not acceptable?
So actually, with laws regarding drugs, it is illegal to buy and sell drugs, but it's not actually illegal to do drugs, because you can't tell me.
Depends on the jurisdiction.
True, but you cannot tell me what I can or cannot do with my body. Again, you can totally and rightfully so disagree with someone's choice to do drugs, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't, as healthcare providers, ensure that say, drug user is able to make informed choices about their body. Are you familiar with clean needle programs?
I am. Yeah.
Correct. And so clean needle programs, they reduce disease transmission. And so even though someone is going to choose to do drugs, it is the responsibility of medical experts and healthcare providers to ensure that we cannot change someone's choices and behavioral patterns, but we can ensure that we provide them resources and able to ensure that their decisions and the impact of their decisions is minimized in whatever way that we can.
Bronte, putting aside for a moment the efficacy of clean needle programs, which I think is dubious, but that might be a discussion for another day. I'm evading the question a little bit here, because you're suggesting that drug use is not criminal in all cases, which is not the case. There are places where drug use is where the use of the drugs itself is criminal. But even so, let's take that, let's accept your premise. Nevertheless, purchasing the drugs would be illegal. Now, this is something you do with your own body, with your own money. This is it's the very same issue, just removed one step. So is it all right for me to express my opinion about illicit drug use, to restrict you from doing something that you want to do? Be that shooting the heroin, purchasing the heroin, putting the heroin in a syringe, whatever you want to say. Clearly, I am restricting your bodily autonomy here, and that has been done throughout civilization, that remains on the books in the United States. So are you saying that drug laws are basically some sort of travesty?
No, of course not, because it's a matter of public health. Now, when we talk about pregnancy and abortion, essentially what causes pregnancy is sex, correct? And we cannot outlaw sex unless that's something that you are trying to bring forth. And so when it comes to laws limiting someone's ability to have bodily autonomy, or, limit someone's ability to behave in a certain way. This is sex and pregnancy and abortion is a very unique circumstance. And sure, we can talk all day about some convoluted, drug analogy, but at the end of the day, well, I know that's your opinion, but we cannot outlaw sex. And sex happens for numerous reasons, and pregnancy can be accidental and unwanted. And so trying to compare it to illegalizing drug use, it's not completely analogous to illegalizing and banning abortion, because sex and drug use are two very different things, and they happen for two very different reasons.
Right, I suppose I'm just discussing the principle that you described earlier, which is that I don't have the right to an opinion that affects what you do with your own body. But even leaving that aside, you say that we can't make sex illegal. I don't think anybody wants to make sex illegal. But historically, all sorts of sex has been illegal, and all sorts of sex remains illegal today. There are certain sexual behaviors, even in our more decadent and inclusive age, that are illegal. Obviously, sex with children or sex with animals, things like that. Historically, sex outside of marriage has been illegal in many places. Sexual activities have been illegal in many places. So we've had laws in the United States, and continue to have laws that regulate sex. All of that, though, I wonder, so historically, those are the facts, and doesn't that seem to be a little bit beside the point when it comes to abortion? Because now we're saying, no, that, consenting adults above the age of 18, they can have all the sex they want. But if you do have sex and you do get pregnant, well, you don't have the right to kill the baby.
Well, when you talk about things like, having sex with children or animals being illegal, that's because they can't properly consent to have sex. Where when we're talking about consent or sex with, consensual sex between adults, that happens for multiple reasons. People have sex for social reasons, social connection, psychological reasons, not just for the reason of procreation. And so sure, pregnancy can happen accidentally and unwanted, but consent must be enthusiastic and ongoing. And so when we talk,
What if it's only tepid consent? Sort of, oh, well, I'll do it, but, I'm not
Yeah, I mean, that's a really big problem in our society right now. And, that's something that people will take, people will push people to say yes, and that's why we say sex should be enthusiastic and ongoing. Because if you are trying to have sex with someone who's not enthusiastic about it, then maybe you should second guess your choices.
But isn't that a bit, I agree with you entirely, but isn't that a bit sex negative of you to say that there is a certain way that one should engage in consensual sex? I mean,
No.
You don't think so?
No, because enthusiasm is expressed, differently between people. It doesn't mean that you have to be jumping up and down. I just mean that the person who's consenting is consenting, very clearly and enthusiastically in their own way, and not being pressured into saying yes, not being timid about saying yes. You are ensuring that they are saying yes, out of their own validity. And when we talk, I want to compare like sex with pregnancy, right? Because we're talking about consent. So you understand that sex can be a fun and beautiful thing with, people do for lots of different reasons, but it's only fun and beautiful when it's consensual. And when sex is not consensual, it can be traumatic and devastating for people.
Sure.
The same thing for pregnancy. When pregnancy is consensual and pregnancy is wanted, it can be a beautiful thing. But when pregnancy is unwanted and non-consensual, then it can be a very traumatic and devastating thing.
Well, I suspect it can be both in either case. I mean, I think not only of the experience of my wife, but of many of my friends who have had kids. And they want kids, and they intentionally get pregnant, or at least they are happy when they find out that they accidentally become pregnant. But there's still a lot of trauma involved in that. I mean, there's a lot of suffering that comes along with that. That's part of pregnancy and childbirth and life generally. Life involves some degree of suffering. So it just seems what you're saying is when the pregnancy is desired, that is beautiful, and we should celebrate it. And when the pregnancy is not desired, then you ought to be able to end it, and meaning end the little baby. And it reminds me of you see this with the royal family. The royal family, the princess gets pregnant, and they say, we have the royal baby. The baby's only 10 weeks in gestation, but they say, this is a royal baby. But then some left-wing woman goes on television and says, I just had an abortion. Well, that's never a baby. That's just a clump of cells. But we're talking about the exact same thing, right? We're talking about a child at, 15 weeks gestation, 20 weeks gestation, let's say. So yes, I understand that the experience of sex and pregnancy can be felt differently in different circumstances, but the baby himself would be the same in both circumstances. It's just in one we celebrate his beautiful baby life, and in the other we kill him as a clump of cells.
So when it comes to medical terminology, it's actually an embryo or a fetus. And when you call it a clump of cells, I agree that that can feel dehumanizing. But on the same side, when you call it a baby, that's also anthropomorphizing. So I think right, and so that's, neither side is correct in its entirety, and that doesn't remove, what?
Well, I guess you're entirely right that I mean, you mentioned the word fetus, which ironically is dehumanizing, although the word fetus, the Latin word fetus just means offspring, and we're referring to human beings here. But doesn't the question hinge on which language should we use? So one is dehumanizing, one is anthropomorphizing, in other words, humanizing. So then isn't the question that we have to answer, is this thing that we're talking about a human or not? And if it is a human, then we should only use the anthropomorphizing language. And if it is not a human, then we should only call him a clump of cells.
Well, when it comes to medicine and medical practice, it is, you call it a fetus. And the reason—
But I don't call it a fetus.
Well, but you're also not a medical professional or anything.
But I'm a human being with rational faculties,
right, but,
who describes the world around him, right?
True, but you aren't having discussions with pregnant people, and when—
Often
as a medical professional. So there are articles written for medical professionals about how to have these conversations. And it is appropriate to call it a fetus. And when the pregnancy is wanted, it is also appropriate to call it a baby when that pregnancy is wanted and desired, and you are trying to create a comforting and accepting environment for that pregnant person. But from a medical standpoint, it is completely appropriate to call it a fetus until you understand where your patient is at in their mentality regarding their pregnancy.
Is that guidance that doctors get? If the mother wants to be pregnant, then you can call it a baby. But if the mother doesn't want to be pregnant, you don't call it a baby.
It depends.
That's amazing that that's the medical guidance.
Yeah, well, it's all about creating a comfortable and appropriate environment for the patient, because we care about the mentality of the patient, and you want the patient to be able to make an informed choice. You want the patient to feel comfortable in your exam room, and calling it a fetus when it is a wanted pregnancy can make them feel detached from that pregnancy, but also calling it a baby when it is an unwanted pregnancy can put, unnecessary pressure and fear onto that pregnant person.
But you don't believe that whether or not the baby is human hinges on whether or not the mother desires the baby or fetus is
It's the question.
You don't think that the desire is the determining factor for the ontology of the embryo?
The embryo is human. That's not within question. It is a human embryo.
So then why wouldn't you use anthropomorphizing language? Why wouldn't you refer to it in human language?
Because language is often emotional, and pregnancy is an emotional state for someone to be in. And as a medical professional, you have to be conscious of the way that your words affect the patient.
And so you would lie to the patient? Because you've just
not lying.
Well, you said it is lying, because you said the baby or fetus or whatever you want to say is a human. And you said the word baby is humanizing language. So you're describing the human being with humanizing language, unless you say that the emotions of the pregnant mother are such that you don't want to describe the human being in humanizing language, and so you describe the human being in dehuman.
Did this get updated? Did this get updated? Hold up. Did this get updated? Did this get updated?
Language. How do you, and you're doing it knowingly, you've just admitted the baby's human.
Yeah.
How would you describe that other than telling a lie?
I didn't say that anthropomorphizing was necessarily a negative thing. And as I said, saying fetus is medical terminology, and it is appropriate. It is appropriate
But it's
description.
dehumanizing.
No. Calling a clump of cells is dehumanizing.
Oh, okay.
Calling it a fetus is not dehumanizing. It's medically appropriate, and it's medically consistent with how you should, define.
Then why the distinction? Why do
Oh, that was
you
58 to
giving
100?
guidance to call
that's
a
crazy.
fetus to the woman who doesn't want the baby, and a baby to the woman who does want the baby?
I've explained this to you, but I can explain it
Or
again.
maybe I'm just a little slow.
That's okay. I'll slow it down for you then. It depends on the mentality of the
Reach
pregnant
takes
person
43 to
and
100
how
then.
they feel towards that pregnancy. Because as a medical professional in that exam room, you are trying to create a comfortable environment where that patient understands what their options are and what their situation is. And so when you are trying to identify how they feel about their current medical state, you want to use language that creates a comfortable environment for them.
So how do those two words affect their emotional state? What is the reason for the distinction? When a pregnant mother who doesn't want the baby hears you describe the baby as a fetus versus as a baby, how are they perceiving and conceiving of that?
So I can probably ask you the same question, Michael. Why on your show and in these interviews do you insist on calling it a baby? Is it because you understand the emotional pull that has on your viewers,
No,
so
because
you
it's-
insist on using that language
it's
because
for
you
the-
understand it's emotional?
No, no, it's because I think it's ontologically precise in exactly the way you just described. Because you say that the word baby is anthropomorphizing, and you said that the human being inside you is a human being. And so it's appropriate to use humanizing language for human beings.
Depending on the conversation that you are having, because you have to be aware and compassionate towards the person that you are having that discussion.
Right, but I don't think it's compassionate to deceive people or to pretend that the human isn't human. I think that
Calling-
it's always disrespectful to lie to people.
Calling it a fetus isn't lying. Calling it a fetus is medical terminology.
But it's less anthropomorphizing than baby, you would admit.
It's medically appropriate.
But would you admit that it's less humanizing than the word baby?
Less humanizing?
Yes,
No,
or
because it's a
anthropomorphizing.
human fetus. It's a human fetus.
It is. So,
Yes.
so if the two words are synonymous, why is there guidance for one and then the other? What you keep saying it's because of the emotional state of the mother.
Yeah.
But okay, how is that perceived? How do the emotions change hearing one word or the other?
Again, I think you understand this because you choose to say baby. Why do you choose to say baby instead of fetus?
Because it's well, I just
Because there's an emotional
no, because it's
there's
precise
emotional
and
baggage.
true.
Because there's an emotional baggage that comes with baby, and so if it
No,
is
because it's plain language, and so I generally try not to use sort of Latin or jargon terms for things that are plainly understood, and so that's why I prefer good Saxon words and good plain words, and I don't use a 25-cent word when I can use a nickel word. And as you just said, the guidance to use one word or the other based on whether the mother wants to have an abortion or wants to give birth to her child, clearly, though you don't seem willing to admit it, but clearly is because the word fetus allows this pregnant mother in distress to abstract away the humanity of her child and makes it easier for that woman to justify having an abortion. Whereas if she were to call it a baby, it would be much, much harder for her to justify killing the baby in the womb through abortion, right? I think you would acknowledge it.
yeah, I can acknowledge that calling it a baby minimizes the options that the pregnant person feels like they have, and it can
Right.
put unwanted pressure onto them. And if they are not in a financial, mental, or physical state to carry through with that pregnancy appropriately, calling it a baby makes them feel as if they have less options than they truly do and should have.
So you mentioned those three states that you might be in where you want to kill your child. Financial state, psychological state, and what was the other one? Physical state. So I understand the psychological state. So let's put that to the side for a second. We can get to it later. What is the financial and physical state that would require one or greatly impel one to end their baby's life in the womb through abortion?
Do you know how much it costs to carry through a pregnancy?
All too well.
Yeah, please.
It's not that. It's actually not that expensive. It's not cheap, but it's not that.
To you, it's not that expensive. But how
No,
expensive? How expensive is it?
Well,
you just went through it with your wife, right?
You need to buy some prenatal vitamins. You got to go to some doctor visits. So it's good to have health care. Though we're very lucky in this country that the very poor have health care through Medicaid, and the elderly, well, I guess they don't get pregnant all that much, but they could have Medicare, and people have health insurance through their employers. And there is a public option in recent years, and people can stay on their parents' health care until the age of 26. So we have and you can go to the emergency room whenever you want. So there are all sorts of healthcare options in the United States, some of which could be improved, and we could maybe get to that later, but there are lots of healthcare options in the United States. And then when one delivers in the hospital, there is a very large sticker price. I mean, it'll say $30,000, $50,000, but people don't really pay that price because insurance covers that, and it's also basically just a scam to enrich the insurance companies. But that's, again, another problem with the U.S. healthcare system. People aren't actually writing $50,000 checks to give birth to their children. So, I'm not saying it's cheap to eat well and be able to stay home on bed rest, perhaps if the doctor requires that, or to get prenatal vitamins, or to raise a kid is very, very expensive. I'm not doubting any of that. But to just get to the point of delivering the baby and then perhaps giving the baby up for adoption is not very expensive.
So actually, I'll correct you there. So it costs about $18,000 on average to carry through with a pregnancy and
I must have
labor.
gotten a good deal then. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
you
didn't
must
pay
have.
that for
So, and if you have insurance, the out-of-pocket cost is around $2,000 to $3,000. But what you might not understand either, which I, work in the medical field in rural North Carolina, so I'm very much familiar with people who they do not have insurance or cannot afford insurance, whether through their employer or if they're contract workers. It just depends. And then the limit for someone to be qualified for Medicaid, there's a good amount of people that fall in between there. And I worked at a clinic that offered free care to people who were uninsured but don't qualify for Medicaid. And our clinic was busy all the time because there is a massive amount of people who fall in that area.
There's a great organization called Good Counsel Homes, which I really love. It's a pregnancy center up in Connecticut, and they do fabulous work for people who, again, might fall through the cracks or might be very distressed, and for whom abortion might seem attractive because of that financial reason. But there are lots and lots of these organizations. You mentioned the one that you work with. I mentioned the one that I've done some work with. There are many, many others around the country, which is good. That's a fact to be celebrated. But it seems to undermine the argument that financial reasons impel people to get abortions.
No, because as we discussed in the beginning, there's multiple reasons that someone might not be able to carry through with a pregnancy, physically, psychologically, and financially. And financially, the financial aspect of it cannot be belittled. Let's be serious.
I think you're overstating it.
Right, that's your opinion. But
well,
for
that's
many,
my opinion with experience. I've got 2 kids under my belt, hoping for more.
So they've actually found that about 40% of Americans cannot afford an unexpected $400 cost, whether that be for their home, for their health, for whatever. And so saying that it's not a big deal to inquire about, if you have insurance, about a $2,000 to $3,000 cost. And if you don't have insurance, it can be about $18,000 on average. When 40% of Americans can't afford an unexpected $400 cost, you are basically discounting the experience of 40%.
The thing about those statistics, though, is they're not quite right, because it's true that many Americans don't have a lot of money, like cash, available, but Americans tend to have a lot of stuff because Americans carry a lot of debt. So those numbers are also somewhat misleading, because of what people do is go into debt. Or if we're talking about something like an adoption, which is what we're really discussing here, there are all sorts of wonderful adoption agencies and all sorts of wonderful programs provided by the state and provided by private charity that cover these costs for all sorts of people who are financially strapped but don't want to kill their children. And so I just think it's an argument to evade the basic question. I promise you, and I'll say it to the camera right now, if you are pregnant and you feel that you can't afford to carry your child through pregnancy, and you can't afford the $500, and you can't find an organization that will cover it, write to me. I will write that check happily. And it's not just me. Plenty of pro-life people around the country would do it. That's why they do it. That's why they give to these organizations. Do you really believe $500 to $2,000 is that delta that people may or may not be able to afford is a strong justification for killing 850,000 human beings every year?
So again, saying the term killing 800,000 human beings
That's what you
is
described.
essentially, no, that is using manipulative and emotional language intentionally,
You
Michael.
said that the fetus is a human being. That wasn't my language, that's your language.
Okay, but killing a human being is not the same as aborting a fetus. But you can use the manipulative and emotional language if you'd like.
Bronte, I'm only using your language, because you said that it's alive and it's a human being. And so what do you call it when you end a life? Just killing, that's just the precise way to describe it. And what do you call a human being is a human being. So I said, you're killing a human being. That's your language.
If that's how you'd like to describe it, that's fine.
That's how you describe it.
Well, since we've talked about the financial aspects of abortion and pregnancy, why don't we talk about the physical and mental aspects of it? Because that is really the heart of the bodily autonomy argument.
Sure. So the physical issue. I don't need to recite these statistics for you. The percentage of women who get abortions because the baby poses a direct threat to their lives, it's a very small number.
And
Far less than 1%.
by direct threat to their lives, you mean they're going to lose their life?
Yep.
Okay, well, Michael, do you know what the leading cause of death for pregnant people is?
Pregnant people?
Mhm.
Mothers? Women?
If you'd like to call them mothers, not all of them are mothers, but if you'd like to call them that,
What are they if they're not mothers?
they're pregnant people.
What people other than mothers are pregnant?
Does it bother you to use inclusive language?
Well,
It's just interesting
I
because-
prefer to use precise language.
It's interesting because you come into this conversation, trying to hold this moral superiority, but then when I
try to
use-
be moral when I can, but
Right, but when I use inclusive language, which it only takes a couple extra syllables to use inclusive language,
To include
and
who?
it seems to include people who don't, identify as women but can become pregnant.
So, like a person who's born a woman and then identifies as a man and is pregnant.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that in order to be a moral person, I need to accept the idea that a man, someone who is born a man and looks like a man, can really become a woman. That's a prerequisite of my being a moral person.
I mean, yes. To me it is, because if you are trying to deny someone of their identity and deny what their life experience is, then that doesn't seem like a moral stance to me. I want to be accepting and I want to respect people's life experiences and respect the way that they want to identify and respect the way that they want to present themselves to the world.
Bronte, I would
Yes.
like to identify, I do identify actually, as the correct person on this issue of abortion. I identify as being correct and more correct than you on this issue. And I would just ask that you accept and affirm my identity. Do you?
Well, you are not a medical professional, and abortion and pregnancy
No, I'm
is
just
a
talking about
medical
my identity.
concern. That's not your identity.
That is I promise you, that's my identity. I promise you that.
That's very different from your sexual and gender identity.
How so? What I'm talking here involves the mind. I mean, don't you think? I'm not just talking about my gonads or something like that. I'm not just talking about my sexual appetites or desires. I'm talking about my mind, my capacity for reason, my judgment here. And so you're saying you don't respect that identity, but you do respect the identity of a man who believes himself to be a woman.
I'm saying that you are someone without medical training, and pregnancy is a medical condition and abortion is a medical procedure. And so we need to abide by the informed and knowledgeable opinions of medical experts. Again, you are entitled to your opinion, but you are not an informed and knowledgeable medical expert, so your opinion is not equal and should not override the opinions of medical experts on this issue. And they have stated unequivocally that abortion access is essential to comprehensive, evidence-based health care.
Bronte, are you a trained epistemologist?
No,
You haven't studied epistemology.
no.
And yet, you are making claims about knowledge and how knowledge can be ascertained and expressed. But you're not trained in that. So it seems to me, if I'm not allowed to have opinions about abortion because I'm not a trained medical professional, you surely shouldn't be permitted to have opinions about how people hold opinions if you're not trained in the very study of knowledge, epistemology.
I'm sorry, if you have a heart condition, who do you go to? Do you go to your deli worker or do you go to a cardiologist?
But if you have a philosophical question, who do you go to?
This isn't a philosophical question. This is a
course it
question
is.
about, it's a question about medical access. This is a question about medical access.
No, well, ultimately, what we're talking about is human life, right? I mean, that's the reason it's a controversial issue.
Well, yes, but also pregnant people are living human lives. So we are
right.
talking about their life,
Yeah.
and their life takes precedent when it comes to medical care.
Right, but that's now you've moved out of the realm of the natural sciences. Now you're into the realm of the philosophical.
No,
sciences.
no, this is a
Just say
fundamental
something-
principle of medical ethics. This is a fundamental principle
Of ethics, right?
of medical ethics.
Right, which is a species of ethics broadly. But you just said you're not a trained ethicist. You said you're not a trained epistemologist. Maybe you're a trained ethicist, are you?
I'm trained in medicine, and we've had to take multiple courses in medical ethics. I have my master's in medical science. I'm a third-year medical
science,
student.
but not ethics or philosophy.
We have to take, I don't know if you know this, but when you are going through medical training, you are trained in ethics, because otherwise
I should
doctors...
hope so. No, I should
Yeah,
hope. I mean, I
exactly.
should hope that anybody who has any education at all would have some training in ethics. Yeah, that's true.
Exactly.
But would you call yourself an expert in ethics and
I would call myself knowledgeable, and also to
Well,
be
yeah, I
clear,
would call myself knowledgeable.
right, but to
Lots
be
of
clear,
things.
as I said at the beginning of this discussion, we're not sitting here just having a discussion about our differences in opinion. I am here to educate you and your viewers on the guidelines and the published statements of our country's leading medical experts, specifically
Not even just the unpublished ones, but the published ones.
but the published ones,
Wow.
the public published opinions of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, who is our country's leading experts when it comes to the health and well-being of pregnant people. And they say unequivocally, and you can look, there's also publications from Harvard, from Colorado University, from Yale, name it. Our country's
yeah.
our country's leading minds, state that abortion access is essential. So you are entitled to your opinion, but it is not equal to the opinion of people who train their entire lives to understand the subject deeply.
Well, if we're citing experts and the leading authorities, I would be remiss if I didn't cite the President's Council on Bioethical Inquiry, which in the middle of the 2000s assembled the nation's leading experts on bioethical questions from all of the top schools with all of the fanciest degrees, and they concluded that abortion is bioethically unacceptable. It's immoral, it's wrong, you can't do it. So I'm not quite sure why I'm supposed to trust the trade organization of American obstetricians over the bioethicists who certainly have far more expertise in this realm of knowledge than the obstetricians, who might be very good at delivering babies, but might not be quite as good at understanding matters of ethics and morality.
So obstetricians and gynecologists specialize in the health and well-being of pregnant people, and pregnancy
Right.
affects the health and well-being of pregnant people.
But it also affects the babies.
Correct.
Yeah.
But when it comes to looking at a pregnant person, their health, when it comes to, a medical condition that it is between the life of the pregnant person and ending the pregnancy, the life of the pregnant person takes precedent unless otherwise specified by the pregnant person, because consent is everything.
So you're saying that the life of the mother takes precedent unless the mother says no. I don't. Okay. Now, again, the only reason I keep bringing up this matter of bioethics is that statement that you're making is not a statement that pertains to natural science. It's in the way that I would say, if you want to get a baby out, you use this clamp, or if you want to make an incision into an abdomen, you use this sort of knife or this instrument. When you say so-and-so's life takes precedence over someone else's life, that is a philosophical statement and an ethical statement, which is different than a statement about natural science. This glass is made up of certain chemicals or whatever. So that's why I think you're conflating those two realms here, and you're trying to trade expertise from one realm in the natural sciences into expertise in another realm, which would be philosophy and ethics. And I'm all for trying to bring these things together in a university-style way. You bring knowledge together because everything affects everything else. But I think it's just disingenuous to claim then that obstetricians are the be-all and end-all authorities on every single matter. It's also worth pointing out these threats to the life of the mother are threats to her actual life are exceptionally rare. I mean, far less than 1% of people who have abortions do so because of a threat to the life of the mother. There's no medical condition for which the treatment is abortion.
That's actually incorrect.
It's
But
not
also,
incorrect.
as I asked you before,
Yeah.
do you know the leading cause of death for pregnant people?
I assume it's some comorbidity of, I don't know, obesity or heart disease or something involving preeclampsia. I don't know.
It's actually homicide. Homicide is the #1 cause of death for pregnant people.
#1 cause of death for babies and abortion, too. It is.
But we are talking about living, breathing people who are people's daughters, sisters, mothers. Did you know 59% of people who get abortions already have children? And so we're talking about them prioritizing their needs and their life, and you trying to limit their ability to care for their already existing children. And the #1 cause of death for
Well,
pregnant
limit their
people,
ability to care for
you do, because being able to afford medical care for pregnancy and labor takes away from their ability to care for their already existing
in a very
children.
small way. It costs a lot of money to raise children. So if we're talking about $500 here or there, which again I think we already pointed out can be taken care of through any number of organizations, through the state, through private charity. But if we're talking about the difference of $500 here, the cost of raising a child to the age of 18 is enormous. It's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Correct.
And so if you're if you won't be able to raise your children because of a $500 cost, then you're not going to raise your children anyway, right? You can't afford to raise them anyway because the total cost is just greater.
A $500 cost is what the average cost of an abortion. The average cost of pregnancy and labor is $18,000 without insurance, and about $3,000 with insurance. And so I don't, again, I see that you see yourself as a compassionate and moral person, but in order,
I strive to be. I don't know that I see myself that way, but I certainly strive.
It doesn't seem so when you try to consistently minimize these hardships that people are encountering, and you say it's not that much, it's not that big of a deal.
I just think that it is better for a mother to endure the discomfort and cost of pregnancy than it is for her to murder her child. Is really what I think.
That's your opinion,
And
but
it
it's
happens to be
also
correct.
it's also not your right to decide what the amount of risk someone should take, what amount of harm they should endure without their consent.
Why is that not my right?
Why is it not your right to decide what sort of risk that I should take over my body?
Yeah. Why is that not my right?
Because it is my body and I get to decide what kind of health risks that I accept.
But we've already established that especially in a self-governing republic, we pass all sorts of laws that restrict people's bodily autonomy, like drug laws. So why is it my right to pass a law against about you using heroin, but not my right to pass a law that prevents you from murdering your child? For that matter, we live in a self-governing republic. We have laws against murder that limits what people can do with their own bodies to somebody else in exactly the same way that a law against abortion would limit what you can do with your own body to another human being.
Can you tell me a scenario where you can force someone to use their body to save the life of another individual?
Of a situation other than motherhood?
Mm-hmm.
No, I think motherhood is unique.
Okay, so you can't describe any other scenario where one human can be forced against their will to use their body to save the life of another person.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to a law that says, if you see a little kid drowning in a pool, you have an obligation to jump in the pool and pull the kid out. I mean, I think that would be perfectly reasonable.
That's not the same thing as using your internal organs and
Oh,
bodily
well, that's
resources.
different. Yeah, your internal organs, that would be unique to motherhood. Yeah.
Right, and so the fact that there is no other scenario where you can force a living person to use their body to save the life of another person means that you are trying to grant fetuses rights that no other person on this earth has.
I think you're right to describe motherhood as a singular phenomenon. Yeah, it is unique.
Mm-hmm. And motherhood is something that half of the population can possibly experience. And the fact that there is half the population that will never have the possibility of experiencing that
It's a great pity for us.
makes it so that when you are pushing for abortion bans, it is essentially a sexist issue, and you are creating
Bronte, you know that the pro-life movement is mostly women. And you know that women are split 50-50 on the issue.
Also, it's not pro-life, it is anti-choice, because if you actually
Whatever language you want to use. The
Yeah,
movement against
it's
abortion,
anti-choice.
the movement against abortion is mostly women, and women are split basically 50-50 in America on the issue. So to call it sexist or misogynist or whatever seems a little bit silly. It would seem to me that you are describing this as, the men forcing this on the women, but that just, if you look at the makeup of the movement against abortion, I call it the pro-life movement, and you look at the public opinion on abortion among women, is mostly women.
So the Pew Research Center actually did surveys and found that 61% of Americans feel that abortion should be accessible in all or most cases. 29% of Americans found that it should be accessible in cases of rape, incest, or to protect the life of the mother. And 9% of Americans thought
Hold
that...
on, those numbers don't seem to, you're saying 61% of Americans say it should be available in all cases, and 29% say it should be available for victims of rape.
Rape, incest, or for the life of the mother.
But why is that number small? I would imagine that the number would say, well, certainly women who, face an existential risk from pregnancy, they should be able to have abortion. But wouldn't you expect that number to be higher?
You would expect it, but I think shows like yours...
I just wonder if you were misreading the statistics, because
No.
it doesn't seem credible.
No, you can look it up. It's on the Pew Research. It's by the Pew Research Center, and they found that
It's strange. Why would the number go down for a more dire situation?
No, 29% of Americans think that it should only be accessible.
Oh, understood.
Only be accessible in those scenarios.
Got it.
And so I just want to make it clear that 29% of Americans think that it should only be accessible in cases of rape, incest, or the risk of life for the
problem-
mother.
the-
And so you are, and I understand that that might not even be the category that you find yourself in, and only 9% of Americans believe that it should never be legal. And so I just want to make it clear that you are in the minority on this issue,
the
and
problem-
your viewers might be as well.
The problem with the statistics, though, Bronte, is that, I mean, I'll just take your word for it on the Pew numbers, but you can look at any number of polls on this issue, from Pew to Gallup to Harvard-Harris to all of these other people. And so I can find one poll, I think it was Gallup, but I forget which one it was, that shows that only 6% of Americans believe that abortion should be illegal in all circumstances. 94% of Americans believe that there should be some restrictions on abortion. And when you get even more granular on it, you look at the way that the questions are phrased, the numbers become even more malleable. So, you know, there are lies, damned lies in statistics. I think just if you look at the way that people vote, you look at the way that people express their views through their elected representatives on questions of abortion, it is roughly split. That's why it's been a contentious issue for a very long time. And so, you know, I suppose you can have your statistics from your credible research institute, and I guess I'll have mine.
Yeah, you know, it's really easy to just discount statistics when you disagree
No,
with
but
them.
you're discounting my statistics.
Well, you didn't give me a source, you didn't give me
I
anything
did. I
like
think
that.
it's Gallup, but I could be wrong. on that.
My resources are actually, they're also from Gallup. Pew
I
and
thought it was
Gallup,
Pew.
Pew and Gallup, they published very similar numbers.
Oh, interesting. Well, I suppose I'll just have to go look it up.
Yeah, please do.
But
I encourage your viewers to as well, because I really just want to reiterate that, you know, you feel like this is a 50-50. America is really split, when really we are not. 61% of Americans feel that abortion should be accessible in all or most cases. That is the majority of Americans.
But Bronte, the thing is, and again, by my statistics, you know that those numbers are very different, and by the statistics at the pro-lifers site. But even if that were the case, let's say it's 61%. Okay, 61% are pro-abortion, 60% are pro-abortion, 40% are anti-abortion. So what? It's still you know, it's still roughly split, though by your numbers that's obviously much more favorable to the pro-abortion side. But so what? I mean, that doesn't, you know, the mob of people killed Socrates. The mob of people chose Barabbas. Are we really saying that the measure of right and wrong is some conveniently selected public opinion poll?
Well, if you would like another statistic, 95.
I don't want
Well, I'll give it to you anyways.
You're more than welcome to give it to me.
You're welcome. 95% of OBGYNs say that they would assist a patient in receiving an abortion regardless of their personal feelings about it. So where I
Crazy. So an LBGYN could think that what he or she is doing is actually murdering a baby, and then that person would do it anyway?
because
Wow, I certainly don't trust that person's judgment. Goodness gracious.
it is
what a
because of
crazy
their,
idea.
and that's why I bring it up. Because when we look at the people in our society who are trained to care for the health and well-being of pregnant people, even they understand, 95% of them understand that their personal feelings about this matter cannot override and should not override a patient's ability to access comprehensive medical
So why
care.
do they have those personal feelings at all?
Because your opinion, is about your body and your life alone. And
No, well, we've
as I
established we
said,
can have opinions about all sorts of things that aren't our own body.
right, exactly. But as I said before, the leading cause of death for pregnant people is homicide. And I bring that up because you cannot pretend like you understand the situations that people find themselves in.
So-
People's lives,
So what you're telling me is that if a woman is threatened with murder by her boyfriend because the boyfriend doesn't want her to be pregnant or something like that, that is why we need to basically give those women the option to kill their baby, because their psychopath boyfriends might murder them if they don't murder their own child. That's what you're telling me the solution is to these murderous boyfriends that you're describing?
are you minimizing the threat to someone's life?
No, I just think that I don't think the solution to a boyfriend threatening to kill a girlfriend if she doesn't kill her own child is to encourage the girlfriend to kill her own child.
We're not encouraging her. We
course
are
you are.
giving her the access to that option.
Wouldn't it be better to send in the civil authority to arrest the murderous boyfriend and protect the mother and the child?
In a perfect world, yes, but we don't live in that world.
What if the
Michael.
mother who's afraid of being murdered by her boyfriend wants to keep her child, but she's afraid that she's going to get murdered, so she feels that it'll just be sort of safer for her to go kill the child, even if there was a video of this that just went viral recently of a clearly abusive boyfriend who was trying to throw his pregnant girlfriend into a car to go get an abortion. It went viral, I think, about 6 months or so ago. And the woman clearly doesn't want to get the abortion, and the boyfriend really wants her to. It's the exact situation that you're describing. You think that the solution to that is to make it easier for the woman to get the abortion? To make it easier to give the murderous boyfriend what he wants?
What I am saying, well, no, because this entire thing is about consent. It's about the.
I don't think it's about consent. I think
You don't seem to respect consent.
No, I think
which
consent
seems
is
to be
important.
the heart of the issue.
No, well, you think it's the heart of the issue. I think the baby's heart is the heart of the issue. I think the
Right.
baby's life is the heart of the
And
issue.
you think-
consent plays a role in moral judgments, but it's not the only criterion that we consider when we come to moral decisions.
So, can I ask you,
Yeah.
why do you find it so easy to have compassion for a fetus or a baby that is non-autonomous and has absolutely no awareness of its own existence, but you find it so difficult to expand that compassion towards pregnant people?
Well, no, I don't think it's good for pregnant people, also known as mothers, to kill their children. I don't think it's good for them. I don't think it's good for the children. I also would have to push back on your argument that babies in the womb do not have any awareness. They do have some awareness, and they do react to their environments. They can kick, and they can move, and they can, when the mother eats something that's maybe a little spicy, the baby will actually get hiccups and things like that. And when you describe, I don't know, self-awareness, I mean, yeah, it's true. The baby in the womb does not have consciousness. What is it not going to discourse on, Aristotle or something? But a 6-month-old baby isn't really conscious either. Certainly a newborn baby has no more consciousness than the baby in the womb does.
They're conscious, just not aware. But also,
No. I mean, what do you mean by consciousness?
first of all, are you aware when we can talk about different numbers, but are you aware of the time in which 80% of abortions take place? Like the state of gestation?
Yeah, it's relatively early, first trimester.
Okay, do you know the week, perhaps?
I don't know.
Okay, so 80% of abortions occur before week 9, and you say that their babies are kicking and reacting.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you aware of what a 9-week-old fetus looks like?
Oh, yes, very well.
Yes, can you describe it to me?
Yeah. Well, I suppose by the 10th week. That's especially when you go in and you have your babies. You go in for an 8-week appointment. By the 8-week appointment, they can tell you the sex of your baby, which is amazing. That's how well formed they are already. By the 10-week appointment, they've got basically all of their features formed in a very rudimentary way, but they're already quite formed, and you can look, and they no longer look like a little tadpole entirely. They look much more like a human
Oh,
being.
really?
And they've got their little fingers already and their little toes. Yeah, the tail
So,
is almost gone.
I actually have pictures for you.
Right.
So this is 9 weeks. This is what a 9-week fetus looks like.
Well, let me see.
I would like to, if you want to look at that, and you would like to look at that, you can look at this.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And I know that you,
It's not like any ultrasound I've ever looked at, though.
yeah, I know, that's why I brought them. Because when
But
it
is
comes,
this isn't an ultrasound?
no, this
what
is
is
a 9-week fetus in a petri dish.
In a petri dish?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you have the thing in the petri dish?
To discount misinformation that is spread about this issue,
But
just like you do.
how did the baby get into the petri dish?
I believe these are aborted. And so this,
So you're saying that a baby that has been sucked out and dismembered looks
No.
a little bit different.
they aren't dismembered because there isn't enough of them.
How are they
to
aborted?
The fetus is barely recognizable to the naked eye.
How
at 9 weeks.
How is that baby aborted?
So at 9 weeks, it's usually just a pill that expels the fetus.
What does the pill, all the pill does is expel the baby.
Yeah, it basically makes the uterine lining not able to, or the fetus not able to adhere to the uterine lining, and it sheds it. There's various mechanisms.
So what are some of the other mechanisms?
Well, it depends on the week of gestation.
Let's say around 10 weeks we're talking about.
So I think after 10 weeks what they will do is it's no longer going to be a pill. They essentially inject like saline solution, and they inject, and it removes it from the uterine lining.
So it's basically a poison.
No, it's flushing. It's cleaning out the uterus.
But it's yeah, I'm not saying it's cyanide or something like that, but you're injecting a chemical into the uterus.
Usually like saline solution.
Right, but if I put saline solution on a slug, it'll shrivel up and die.
Yeah, are you a slug? Do
No, but-
humans react the same way to saline solution as slugs do?
Yes, little babies do. Actually.
No, it just
That's why you're
disconnects
using it to kill. Right,
No, so
right,
this
to
the
dissolve
reason
the connection between the mother, between the baby and the placenta and the mother,
So-
and to flush out the poor little baby. So this is why I think it's really ghastly and disingenuous of you to.
No,
show
I'm
those photos,
I'm
is
bringing
because
this because you consistently want to anthropomorphize this issue.
You described the baby as anthropomorphic. You described the baby as a human. You did. You said it's a human being.
It is a human being.
But you know, you're
this,
accusing me of
listen,
anthropomorphizing a human being. That's what
This
human
is a
being already
9-week-old
human being.
fetus. This is a 9-week-old fetus, and I bring this to try to address misinformation about. Can I, if you would please allow me?
Sure,
to
it's
finish.
just really ghastly to show a picture of a person who's been killed.
And I apologize for that, but I
Your
do this.
apology implies that you'll correct your behavior. But you're
No,
not doing that.
because people such as yourself, and there are multiple different websites that like to share propaganda about this issue. And I am here to try to present a medically accurate representation
Of what a
this
murder
issue,
victim looks
of what this issue is. And when you try to act as though it is murder, I want your audience to
You've admitted that
truly,
it's
truly understand what we are talking about. Because I am not saying that a woman with a desired pregnancy shouldn't feel connected to her fetus. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying when we have a person with an unwanted pregnancy, you cannot act as though their choice to decide what is best for their life and their body is murder, when in reality it is a living person standing in front of you who's a living, breathing person with dreams and aspirations, who is a mother, sister,
Was a
daughter.
Wasn't.
No, 59% of people who get abortions are mothers with existing children. And so
Well,
I just want
all of them have existing children. They all do. I mean, Bronte, what's so confusing about this to me, and what's very silly, I think, about showing pictures of aborted babies, is it would be as though if you were to ask me to show you a picture of, what does an Italian guy in New York look like? Okay, and I showed you a picture of a young 25-year-old Italian guy splayed out on the street, chopped up, bleeding, dead, versus an Italian boy eating a bowl of spaghetti or something like that. Those two pictures would look very, very different. And so what the trick, the deception that you've engaged in, is you've taken a baby who has been killed through abortion and been separated from his mother and splayed out and squeezed out and looks unrecognizable, and you're pretending
No.
what you're pretending is that cadaver is what a baby who has not been killed by his mother, who is still in the womb and who is growing, and who is exhibiting all the signs of life, and who's moving, and who has little fingernails,
Do
even
you
at a small
see?
level.
No, this was expelled. It was not dismembered. If you look at this, primarily most of the tissue here is the gestational sac, because the beginnings of pregnancy, the gestational sac and the placenta are what some of the first things created, because that is what attaches to the uterine lining and provides the fetus with resources and expels its waste. That is primarily in the first few weeks of pregnancy. Those are the tissue contents that are created before the fetus is really developed. In a 9-week-old fetus, like I have here, the fetus itself is hardly distinguishable to the human eye
Because it's so small.
because it's so small.
Yeah,
And so
right.
that is why I bring it up.
Because so hold on. Then the point, because when you present this, you say, well, actually, this mostly isn't the fetus. This mostly is all this other stuff. Okay, but then you're not showing me what a fetus looks like. Then you're
The
just showing-
fetus is in this picture.
Right, but just
And
very,
that
very,
is
very,
how-
very small.
That is how.
So how much of that picture is the fetus?
It is indistinguishable to the human
you-
eye.
Oh, so now all you're saying is the fetus at that stage. It's not that the fetus, looks like all this tissue actually isn't really the fetus, because you
It's
can't
in
even
there.
see the fetus. It's in
Exactly.
there, but you can't really see it. So now what you're admitting is you're not showing people a picture of a fetus. You're showing people a picture of a gestational sac that's been expelled.
Hey guys, I hope everyone's having an awesome day, because in the last movie, Hagrid was put... Like, no one in the house would hear that.
Harry, open the door.
Yeah, he looks exactly to be the age of 14. I feel like I can tell teenagers' ages, but not children.
I need you to sign this form.
Later, perhaps, if you behave.
I will if she does.
You're still here, are you?
Yes.
Say yes in that ungrateful way.
He's very ungrateful that you're here.
Just a small one. Excellent nosh.
That opening to the back is very pretty. I actually really like that.
Want to try a little drop of brandy?
She's a horrible dog owner.
Where did you send the boy, Brennan?
St. Brutus's.
They use a cane at St. Brutus's, boy?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been beaten loads of times.
What is it the boy's father did for Junior? Nothing. He didn't. A drunk too, no doubt.
My dad wasn't a drunk.
Oh.
I think it's time you went to bed.
It's nothing to do with the father. It's all to do with the mother.
Oh, don't you dare.
Something wrong with the bitch, then there's something wrong with the pup.
Shut up!
Why are you insulting this boy's mother?
Let me tell you.
That looks extremely uncomfortable. Harry can destroy and mess with this entire family if they really tested him. He's showing what he can do.
Fucking do something!
Why does Dudley look like he looks CGI for a second? Oh, he's turning her into a balloon. Not fat, just filling her with air. Sorry. Okay, and that's how Vernon lost his sister.
You bring her back!
No, she deserves what she got. Keep away from me.
You're not allowed to do magic outside school.
Yeah? Try me.
Finally, he ran away. See, this is very different than the previous two. This is very horror-esque. Very eerie, creepy, and it's even shot differently, it feels like. Was that a triple-decker bus? What is that?
Welcome to the night bus. What you doing down there?
Fell over.
What you fell over for?
I didn't do it on purpose.
Well, come on then.
He missed out on leg day, huh?
Take her away, Ian.
It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Why did he not take Hedwig?
What did you say your name was again?
I didn't. But the muggles. Can't they see us?
Muggles? They don't see nothing.
Little old lady at 12 o'clock.
He's like, that's okay. I'm a drift around her.
2, 1 3/4. Yes!
She didn't feel the wind or anything like that?
Who is that? That man?
The prisoner of Azkaban?
That is Sirius Black. Don't tell me you've never been hearing of Sirius Black. He's a murderer.
Called it. Called it.
How did he escape?
Well, that's the question. He's the first one that done it.
It's a big supporter. You know who.
I don't know how to explain it, but oh, that's not good. Young Daniel Radcliffe and young Robert Pattinson have the same energy to me.
Ah, Mr. Potter.
Take her away, Ian.
Yeah, take it away.
Hedwig.
You arrived here just 5 minutes before yourself.
No thanks to you, Harry, abandoning Hedwig like that.
Your uncle's sister was located a little south of Sheffield. She will have no recollection of the incident and no harm done.
Except you can't come back to Hogwarts.
Minister,
Yes.
I broke the law.
The ministry doesn't send people to Azkaban for blowing up their aunt. Oh, these are your new school books.
Oh, that's so nice.
Harry.
Harry, they're all growing up.
From Belgium. Mrs. Weasley.
Good to see all of your clothes.
Everything's there.
Good boy.
Harry, wonder if I might have a word.
Yeah, sure.
Harry, I want you to swear to me that whatever you might hear, you won't go looking for Black.
Why would I go looking for someone who wants to kill me?
I don't know, Harry. You have a very strange thought process. I would not put it past him to do that. I really do think he would look for somebody trying to murder him and then be like, why are you trying to murder me?
Harry was lucky not to be expelled. Come on, everywhere else is full.
How is it she knows everything?
Do you think he's really asleep?
Seems to be. Why?
I've got to tell you something.
They're not being very quiet or respectful about him trying to sleep.
Sirius Black has escaped from Azkaban to come after you. He's a murderous raving lunatic.
Thanks, Ron.
What's going on?
This is way more horror themed. It's so eerie. What is that? Please, I would shut the door on him. I would honestly be like, no, close. They put a that filter on him? What's happening?
Thank you.
Here, eat this. It'll help. It's all right. It's chocolate.
What was that thing?
It was a Dementor.
That's a Dementor? Why did try to eat Harry then? So a Dementor is a scary creature that guards Azkaban.
Welcome, welcome to another year at Hogwarts. Now, I'd like to say a few words. First, I'm pleased to welcome Professor R.J. Lupin, who's kindly consented to fill the post of Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher.
That sounds like a good role for him, granted what he just did on the train.
Hogwarts play host to the Dementors of Azkaban.
That's terrifying. Even just knowing you live in the universe where those things exist is mortifying. I'd be so afraid. I'd just be like, I can't be here. They're too scary.
I am Professor Trelawney. This time we shall be focusing on tessomancy, which is the art of reading tea leaves. Truth lies buried like a sentence deep within a book, waiting to be read.
I love this classroom. The vibe of this classroom is so nice.
Well, Harry's got a sort of a wonky cross, so gonna suffer, but you're gonna be happy about it.
What?
Oh! Ah! It's among the darkest omens in our world. Omen of death.
That's the dog that he saw right before the crazy bus got him.
Right, you lot. Less chattering. Form a group over there.
Hagrid. Exactly what is that?
That, Ron, is a hippogriff. First thing you want to know about hippogriffs is that they're very proud creatures.
Griffins with hippos?
Now, who'd like to come and say hello? Well done, Harry. Have to let him make the first move.
He's pooping. He's mid-poop.
Is it low? Not so fast, Harry. Now let him come to you. Yes. They let you ride him now. What?
Hagrid.
The weak joint?
What? Once I saw the wings come out, I was like, okay, yeah, that's gonna be a flight. It's like a Pegasus chicken. It's really odd to see such an uplifting scene with so much grayscale and not really much color at all. It seems very dead. That's strange to see. It's kind of cool.
Yes, you're not dangerous at all, are you?